but I hate it because it's not realistic. Buddy, if I wanted realistic, I'd watch Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey's match on repeat. That is the most realistic wrestling match on the planet. And if you want to watch realistic wrestling matches, we can bring that up and you can just watch that all day long. Pro wrestling is a televised show. It is not a legitimate sporting competition. There is athletics in it, yes. That's cool. That's one of the things we love about pro wrestling. Not only do you want to apply real world logic, you want to apply logic from one company to another company.
It makes the pile driver into a devastating move. Meanwhile, in AEW, it's used for 2 counts, and people wonder why AEW sucks. Now, me personally, I'm not going to go as far as to say AEW sucks, but I do think there is a little bit of truth in this tweet. I've said on here before, one of the things I find unwatchable about AEW is the constant no-selling, and then
All right. Well, I'll just let him finish.
Constantly taking big moves like tombstones and stuff like that and using it for 1 counts, 2 counts. Look, the tombstone is a big example for me because the tombstone is a move that growing up was like this match ender. The Undertaker used it, Kane used it, and when someone kicked out of it, like Shawn Michaels did a couple of times, it meant something. It really, really meant something. Yet you go and flick on AEW, you see, I don't know, Okada versus Hangman Page. I don't even know if they've fought, but you'll see 15 tombstones, and that won't even be the move that ends the match. AEW does a very good job of ruining the importance of moves.
All right, here we go. All right, so look, I think that a lot of people forget how professional wrestling works. A professional wrestler typically has a finishing maneuver. Now, their finishing maneuver might not be the tombstone pile driver. That means if they're doing a tombstone pile driver in kayfabe, they might not be proficient with it. There's a difference between the Undertaker doing a tombstone pile driver, that's his finish, versus doing it as a move. Like, for example, Will Ospreay taking a tombstone pile driver from Kyle Fletcher. Those are different things. But I want to go back to the beginning of this, right? Where he says the constant no selling. And I see this all the time in comments, and I feel like a lot of you have a fundamental misunderstanding of how pro wrestling works, or even what you're saying, right? The fact that you think that someone is no selling a pile driver, that means taking the move and getting up immediately and not doing like, my head, laying on the ground or anything like that. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, but pro wrestling does not work if you don't sell the moves. So to think that AEW has no selling at all times, people are just walking around, take a move, do a move, take a move, do a move, take a move. It's ridiculous. It really goes to the fact, it really gives a lot of credence to the fact that some of you are not watching what you're talking about. You're watching clips on the internet and you're saying, based off those clips, this is the way I feel. I don't know if you know this, like editing is a thing. When you take a clip and you show a move, and you show that move happening, and then you cut it, and you show another move that's later on in the match. I don't understand how people are this. Look, I don't want to say they're smooth brained, but I think they're more disingenuous, right? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're smart people, either talking about things they don't know about, which is fine. We can all learn something. I don't know everything about the world of professional wrestling. That's just the way it is. Pro wrestling is a vastly in-depth art form. No one person knows everything. I get that. But then I don't also try to go around using the words that I don't know what they mean. I try to look them up. But these people, like our friend here, Joe Hall, is describing something that is not happening. He's saying that people are taking 15 tombstone pile drivers, and that in a match. I don't know about you, bud, but I rarely see a move besides someone's like setup or finisher being repeated in a match. Like, people aren't going around spamming tombstone pile drivers. That's just not happening, like, at all. And what did you say, James? This is not how they do it in Swan Lake. Yeah, man, it's the same. It's the same thing. People are like, oh, it's just a choreographed ballet dance. That's what wrestling's always been, G. I don't know if you know this, but wrestling, professional wrestling, hasn't been a shoot since the 30s. It's all predetermined. I don't know if you understand like the history. I did a video about this. There was a group of guys called the Gold Dust. The Gold Dust Trio, and they were like they invented what they called slam bang wrestling. Who was the guy? Who was the original guy? Mm, what's his name? Here he is. All right, here you go. Little history lesson here. What was his name? Tootsmond, Joseph Tootsmond. Okay, so these are the guys where Joseph Tootsmond is essentially the godfather of pro wrestling, how you know it today. They called it slam bang wrestling back in the day, and they were the first ones to figure out we should make storylines involved in our wrestling here, tell tales. That's going to make more people interested. Here you go. In the early 1920s, Sandow, who is, where's he at? Billy Sandow. There you go. Billy Sandow. I think wasn't he also married to? Yeah. No, I'm thinking the wrong guy. Why did I think that he was involved with Eugene Sandow? No. Okay, never mind. Anyways, Slam Bang Wrestling started in the 1920s. Sandow was looking for a grappler to serve as Lewis' sparring partner and fill in opponents. So this is where they decided all the types of different wrestling were going to come together. So he implemented a new form of wrestling that combined features of boxing, Greco-Roman wrestling, freestyle, lumber camp fighting, and theater to what was to be deemed as slam bang Western style wrestling. This is the genesis of pro wrestling being a work. This is the start of pro wrestling being entertainment. 1920s. The 1920s, 100 years ago, dog. We've been doing this shit for 100 years, and you can't figure out maybe this is an entertainment business. I don't know what to tell you. Like, okay. Anyways, I digressed. Back to Joe here. Joe, no one is spamming tombstone pile drivers, right? We've all seen people kick out of one of big moves. Cody kicked out of a burning hammer at once, which is also another banned WWE move. And yes, James, gasp in the chat. It's not real. The pro wrestling is very real. I can see it with my own eyes. I can see it. I can go to it. I can touch it. I can taste it. If I taste it, I'll probably get kicked out. Anyways, it is a real thing. It's just predetermined. Just like Law and Order is predetermined. Just like, Modern Family, Young Sheldon. These are all scripted shows. And the fact that we can't get past this, the fact that we're viewing wrestling in its own bubble that it has to be real, is something I still don't understand with our wrestling community. Pro wrestling, at its core, was meant to be, you're supposed to think it's real. The fact that we know, like, kayfabe is gone, sorry, hate to break it to you, it's never coming back. We understand that pro wrestling is predetermined. We as an audience have gotten smarter, but we as an audience have not changed how we watch pro wrestling. I think the way you should watch modern pro wrestling is just turn your brain off, and whatever's happening in front of you is real. When we start trying to apply real world logic to pro wrestling, you're gonna have a bad time, just like a ski instructor. Shout out for all my older millennials who get the South Park reference. Anyways, yeah, if you understood that reference, make sure that you stretch, and your back is probably hurting, so make sure you take care of that. The fact, though, that we still are viewing it in a way of it being real. And let me take a second to point this out. I want to point out 3 specific instances in pro wrestling that you just completely overlook, despite the fact that they are absolutely illogical, right? If we were to look at pro wrestling logically, let's look at the vertical suplex, first of all. And this is the namesake of my company. This is the namesake of my channel. The reason I made it Suplex Media, because I wanted to point out how we just glaze over these things. A vertical suplex is the most unbelievable move I've ever seen. You're going to take an opponent who does not want to be flipped and slammed over their head, hold them up vertically, sometimes, maybe even for like 2 or 3 seconds, and they're not going to wiggle, they're not going to shake, they're not going to try to get themselves down. You're such a muscular man that you can hold somebody up, over your head, a full-grown adult, go pick someone up. Go do this to, like, if you're a dad, go do a vertical suplex to a squirming 8-year-old. Like, if you got a child, yeah, you might be able to do it. It's not easy. Your back probably hurts now. And I'm sorry, your health insurance probably isn't going to cover that, big dog. My bad. It's an illogical move. A second illogical move. The Irish whip. Think about the physics of this. I throw you. I take you and I pull you. You just would step forward and stop. Go try to pull somebody by their arm. They're not going to shoot off and run. What are you talking about? But this is just another thing in pro wrestling. We've said, okay, that's fine. Nope, no questions here. No questions here. That's fine. James in the chat saying most people have never been in the ring. Yeah, dog. Most people have never been in a ring. And I got to tell you, as someone, and I'll do a quick story here. Shout out Josh Ashcraft at OVW. Josh Ashcraft is like the workhorse of OVW. That man has done so many things there, has worn so many hats, is such an integral part to that company that it has been made better over the last, I don't know, he was there the whole time I was there. So that was, I could say 12. He was there before I was. So I don't know how long Josh has been there. Over a decade, easily over a decade. OVW has been made a better place because of people like Josh Ashcraft who have spent time, effort, and energy in making that brand what it is today. So shout out Josh. But back in the day when I used to be the director of OVW, Josh Ashcraft was I don't know if he's the head referee. He was a referee. I don't think he was the head referee yet. Oh, no, the head referee was Joe Wheeler. Yeah, who's also the commissioner for Kentucky's Boxing Wrestling Association. Shout out Joe Wheeler. Anyways, Josh Ashcraft, I was waiting for the show to render, and Josh said, well, the place is empty. Do you want to learn how to take bumps in the ring? Yeah, I most certainly did. And I went out, and he showed me how to take bumps and hit the ropes. And I got to tell you, they have cable ropes, by the way. Ow. I was not expecting the ropes to hurt when you hit them, but they do. They hurt a lot, which is one of the reasons why I really respect the business of pro wrestling, or respect the art form of pro wrestling. The fact that these guys go in there and do that like it's nothing, good for them, man. That's insane. Like, yeah, people think it's like a rubber band. It's not. It is a steel cable with a garden hose and electrical tape wrapped around that. Dude, it's not a trampoline. They're springy. Don't get me wrong, that's because of the tension. But it's insane to me how many people are like, if you got into the ring and took a bump right in the middle, right in the very center, and you don't do it right, you're going to get hurt. Flash forward to me, Josh telling me how to take a bump. I go to take a bump, flat back, bam, smack my head on the mat, roll out of the ring, and I was like, you know what? I better go check on the render. That was so I could go throw up in the trash can. I don't know if I was slightly concussed. I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't go. What am I going to tell him I got hurt playing pro wrestler? No, I was 22 at the time. I thought that would have been bad to do. I didn't die, so like whatever, it was fine. But yeah, where were we? Man, I just went on a whole tirade about that. Oh yeah, the Irish whip, right? It's not a logical move. It's definitely not a logical move, but we just say, it's fine. Okay, you're not convinced yet. Fine. You're not convinced yet. Fine. Let's talk about just having a downed opponent. If you have a downed opponent and your objective is to make them unable to kick out for the count of 3, why wouldn't you just kick them in the head as hard as you can? It's obviously legal. Randy Orton has done it. He's won matches like that. Just kick them. I'm sorry, but we're like, oh, if you're in a fight and it was a shoot fight, a real deal fight, or a prize fight for money, as wrestling is, as the area around wrestling is, that's like the whole idea is they're wrestling for their job, for more money, to win, you get paid more, right? Okay. Why wouldn't you just like, instead of, taunting, I get it, maybe you're a cocky guy. That's fine. That's fine. But if you're a heel and you want to win and you're like a title match, for example, you have a title match and you have a chance to win the World Heavyweight title, which brings so much prestige, and you have a downed opponent, but instead of just stomping their head in, you decide to pick them up and, do a vertical suplex. That doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, there's just so many things in pro wrestling that we've let go on for so long. We have to be ideologically consistent in our viewing of pro wrestling, right? If we're looking at the mechanics of pro wrestling, you're going to have a bad time. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It's entertainment, friends. I couldn't imagine, like, if you went over to a friend's house and you popped on Lord of the Rings and they were like, this isn't really realistic, you'd look at it and be like, you need to get out of my house. But I came over to your house. But you need to leave your own house. Because you're insane. You're taking an illogical thing, something that's supposed to be fantasy, fun. That's not a real thing. It's not a documentary. And you're saying, this doesn't make sense. Now, I will say, I do want to make a distinction, right? If you want to dissect pro wrestling and talk about storylines not making sense, things not being one-to-one, characters having strange developments, things like that, by all means, I welcome that conversation. As someone who's done writing in professional wrestling, I enjoy that talk. And I think that that is better than the talk about business metrics, about the mechanics of professional wrestling. Let's be honest, most of the people talking about the mechanics of professional wrestling have never stepped foot inside of a ring. I don't know if our friend Joe Hall here has, but I'm going to assume he hasn't. And that's just an assumption, right? Just an assumption. But if you want to talk about like the stories not making sense or like the fantasy, I'd rather talk to people who fantasy book angles than people who talk about the mechanics of wrestling, who have never been in a ring, who talk about the business of wrestling, who have never done anything in the business. It's idiotic, right? It's idiotic to talk about things you don't know about. Just learn something. It's easy. There's people out there, myself included, who will talk to you about the world of wrestling, and that's fine. And I'm not saying don't have opinions, but like, if you're going to have opinions, have informed ones at least. What else? He's got 12 seconds here. Chat, it says, I described the Bloodline, Red Bear in the chat says, describe the Bloodline story to some casuals at my last barbecue. And they tried to say those are what? Hold on. My chat's, it just says ... Those are ... For some reason, it didn't give me the rest of your chat. Anyways. Let's see. Oh, let me turn the chat back on. My bad, guys. There you go. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If you want to talk about the storylines, and last point I'll make about the storylines, I understand that this is a television show. If you were to watch a television show like CSI Miami, Young Sheldon, The Good Place, and things don't make sense in the narrative structure, I totally get that. That's how we're supposed to consume media. We're supposed to talk about these things. But when you talk about it in a way that's logical, well, there's a lot of things on television that don't make sense. I'm going to talk about like CSI Miami. You think the crime scene investigation unit, the nerds who sit in the basement, are like going out and busting these like international like fugitives and like evil ne'er-do-wells? No, they're not, dog. That's what like beat cops and detectives do. Like, it's not the people in the lab, you know. It's crazy to me that we look at wrestling in such a with such an analytical lens that we completely forgot the plot of pro wrestling. You're supposed to think it's real. The fact that you don't think it's real anymore because you're an adult is okay. You can still enjoy it. Follow the narrative structure in each company. The fact that WWE banned the pile driver makes a lot of people think that the pile driver should be banned everywhere. The pile driver should be treated as a big move everywhere, but that's not how it is. Why does one television show does not follow the narrative structure or the rules of that universe? Like, I don't know. We haven't seen a Suits and Marvel crossover, but like they both exist in New York, I'm pretty sure. But just because they're the similar thing or similar type of thing doesn't mean they have to obey the same rules. I mean, WWE doesn't even follow this rule. They're not even ideologically consistent in their own thing. People do Canadian destroyers in WWE all the time, and they don't whip out the wee-woo wagon for all of them. I don't know what to tell you guys. The fact that you think that AEW, any indie promotion, TNA, New Japan, Stardom, any of those have to follow the same rules and regulations as WWE shows that you don't watch enough pro wrestling. And maybe that's your problem. You need to watch more pro wrestling. That's why I'm creating the re-education camps. I'm going to force you to watch more pro wrestling, and you're going to fall in love with it again, or you're going to break rocks into smaller rocks. I just the Kickstarter's coming, folks. The Kickstarter's coming. Let's see if he has anything else to say.
Of moves in professional wrestling. Like, I am a big fan of moves being protected in pro wrestling, which is why I was so happy the End of Days was kept special for Baron Corbin. Like, that move went so long without people kicking out of it. Whereas if he was in AEW, he'd have to deliver 45 of them before he'd even get a 2 count.
Dog, I mean, I see, like, I know a lot of people, when they have somebody who's ideologically, like, their opponent, right? We have different views on this. They think that, like, this person's not joking, they're telling the truth. I think what he's saying at the end of the day, the End of Days thing, I think that's for, like, comedic effect, obviously, right? I think that I don't want to go into that. I think he's just trying to have a laugh, which is fine. Like, even if we don't agree on things, I understand you're still a human being who wants to have a haha every now and again. Like, that's not a big deal. But the fact that you think that, like, earlier where you kept saying, like, AEW is it doesn't protect big moves. Like, AEW has their own big move. Like, the Tiger Driver 91, like, that's their pile driver, right? You wanted to follow a narrative structure of protecting a move. There has been a literal through line of Will Ospreay stepping into the company and the Tiger Driver 91 being, like, the most devastating move that's ever existed. Like, that has been a story that has surrounded Will Ospreay to the point where one of the stories going on about Will Ospreay was, I shouldn't use the Tiger Driver because I'll hurt somebody. And I'm a good boy. Like, that's what you wanted. You wanted, Joe, you said you wanted that in your wrestling. It's there. I'm pointing at it. The One-Winged Angel, when done by Kenny Omega, usually gets a pinfall. When they kick out of a One-Winged Angel, people lose their minds. That's a protected move. It's not a pile driver. It's the One-Winged Angel. You wanted that in your wrestling. There it is. WWE did that once with the Shooting Star Press. Oh, everyone was. Well, not everyone did the Shooting Star Press. Remember when Brock was doing the Shooting Star Press? As I mentioned previously, I live in Louisville. I grew up watching OVW. And I remember flipping on the television one day because they had local programming at the time, and seeing Brock Lesnar in the Davis Arena do a Shooting Star Press. What? That's insane. I'm 90% sure I also saw it at the Christmas Chaos show many, many years ago, but I don't particularly remember it. But I remember seeing the footage, and it's insane. Yeah, Brock. Let's see. Never watched Revolver show. Never let me go to the tonight to see some great. Oh, you're going to Pro Wrestling Revolver? That's cool. Where are they at? I don't know anything about Pro Wrestling Revolver. Wait, is that Chicago? I think it's Chicago. Yeah, Yammer Yager. I think that's Yammer. Yager? I believe it is. My only touch point with that name, I don't know if I'm probably mispronouncing it. I think the last name's Yager, is like the hockey player from a long time ago. Remember NHL Hits? NHL 2005 was my Jimmy Jam. I really wish I got more into hockey. It looks like fun. Let's see. He also had another one, but he said people. I want to play this other one. I don't know if I've actually seen it. No.
People had the audacity to call me out for saying that AEW were ruining big moves. A Styles Clash to the outside, from the ring apron to the floor. Now, not only does this not end the match, it doesn't even come close. You then see Darby Allin go from the top rope, do a coffin drop to the ring apron and miss Will Ospreay. We're talking like a nasty, nasty bump. So now after he's took a Styles Clash to the outside, took a nasty, nasty...
Chat, is Will Ospreay's finisher the Styles Clash? I don't think it is. And I want to point something out here. A lot of people, when you say a big move, well, I mentioned this at the beginning, just because it's a big move doesn't mean the person's, in kayfabe, proficient at it. It doesn't mean that they can end a match with it. For example, a DDT is a transitional move. A DDT for Jake Roberts is laying his opponent out for the 3-second tan every single time. You have to, if you're going to try to if you want to get and follow the logic of pro wrestling, there are certain rules. Finishers done by other people rarely get the win. The One-Winged Angel, when Hangman did it to Kenny, doesn't get the win. because it's not his finishing maneuver. It's bonkers to me that these people want to talk about the logic of wrestling, but they throw out everything they know about professional wrestling at the same time. Like, at a point, and this is why, like, I rather attribute malice than stupidity. I'll be honest. Like, I don't want to call anyone like dumb, right? No matter what I've said, I think that all people are inherently have some kind of common sense about them for the most part. But the fact that you like are over analyzing this match in the way that you're doing it, at simultaneously forgetting everything you know about wrestling, makes me think that you're not genuine with your take. And that's the way I feel about a lot of these takes. A lot of these people on here, different wrestling companies follow their own psychology and canon. You're exactly right, Richie. One of the things I really enjoy about AEW is the canon of AEW extends to all of wrestling. Yes, a lot of the times that can get confusing. You might miss certain things if you are not smartened up to everything that's ever happened in the world of wrestling. If you're a big wrestling nerd like myself, you love that kind of stuff. It's like when the Marvel movies have callbacks, like people like lose their mind. There's a whole channel dedicated to pointing out Easter eggs, the New Rockstars channel. If you haven't seen them and you like the Marvel movies, go check them out later today after the stream. Shout out New Rockstars. Anyways, Blade Apocalypse, wrestling fans don't know their history. Yeah, they don't. And that's fine because I'll be honest, there's a lot of wrestling out there. There's a ton of wrestling out there. And not everybody has the time to watch everything, but AEW for the most part does a decent job telling those stories. Like I've heard Excalibur mention like feuds from New Japan with two people and talked about the history of the wrestling company. What I love about AEW is wrestling exists outside of AEW. Not so much in WWE. You know, they rarely mention other companies, which they've gotten a little better about. Oh, you know, just a little bit better about. But wrestling exists as an art form outside the confines of WWE. It exists outside the confines of AEW. Pro wrestling is a wonderful art form that exists in so many different places. But the fact that you think that one company gets to dictate the rules of pro wrestling shows a misunderstanding of the art form. All right, what do we got? Yeah, what else you got to say? Anything in
Nasty coffin drop bump. Surely he can't win the match. Oh wait, yes he can because it's AEW. How do you logically make this make sense? Look, I'm under no illusion that wrestling is fake.
Sure, how do you make it make sense? Two guys who are very never say die. Like Darby Allin's whole thing is he is indestructible. We've seen Darby Allin go through off a ladder through plate glass. Like we've seen Darby Allin do some of the most insane things. That's his thing. He does things that you wouldn't think possible because that's what makes Darby Allin a star. It's the same. Look like Rey Mysterio, right? If you want to talk about the logic of anything, Rey Mysterio should not beat anybody. I'm sorry, like you're quick, yes, but like, I'm sorry, Dave Bautista got a hold of you. He should crush your head like a melon. Darby Allin, his trait is he can't be destroyed. I don't understand how we're still having this conversation. Like you've seen I assume, Joe, that you've seen Darby throughout his entire time in AEW. Darby Allin always overcomes the odds because that's what he does. Why it makes sense is because that's how the character's written.
But come on, I mean, you've got to at least make it a little bit believable. The Styles Clash is a move that AJ Styles has used for decades to end matches. And okay, maybe in big matches against guys like
Wow, I'm blown away at the Michelle McCool erasure. Michelle McCool has also used that match for quite a long time. Michelle McCool has done that, and she is very good at what she does. And she's won matches, but you don't want to talk about Michelle McCool. It's only AJ Styles. Wow, I think you're kind of sexist. Remember, I said, people you ideologically disagree with want to make a joke. I'm making a joke there.
John Cena, Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, whoever, maybe he's had to use 2 or 3 to get the match done. But I can almost guarantee you that if he ever delivered one from the apron to the outside of the ring, it'd probably end the match. But not in.
I don't know. I feel like AJ Styles has probably done a Styles Clash out from the apron. Maybe not. Beside the point. It is not Will Ospreay's move, big dog. It's not. It's not his move. I don't know what to tell you. AJ has and it did not. Yeah, James and Chess says AJ has and it did not in the match. And from the top rope. Yeah, okay. There you go. I mean, I could Google it, but I also don't want to get copyright striked from TNA probably. And through a table and off a ladder. Yeah, Big Dog just hates kickouts. He just hates Maybe he's a finisher truther, right? Maybe he's like the finisher is the finish of the match. Like this guy gets super hot at all of the WrestleMania matches where they're just kicking out of finishers left and right. And it's just, I love this. I assume this is this gentleman's head canon, right? AEW, a match, or no, in a WWE match, they can kick out of big moves as long as it's a big match. For some reason, WrestleMania means more. Yeah, I understand it's a big show, right? This guy, but to me, the opposite logic of that is, well, shouldn't you be trying to win every match? That's kind of the point of your job in pro wrestling, is to win every single match. Especially in this tournament. This is a big tournament. This is essentially the American G1. Aren't all of these matches big? Mm-hmm. It's all depending on how you look at it. And that's why I think this is kind of a disingenuous take.
In AEW, because all the guys are made out of concrete, taking guys, finishing moves, making them 10 times more dangerous and having them not end matches doesn't make the guys look really strong and really brave. It makes the company look stupid. It makes your wrestling look ridiculous.
Dude, if that's your take, like if that's, I'm sorry. I'm going to snap my own glasses over this take. Like, if you are looking at pro wrestling this way, you've lost the plot. You've gone right past. You need to do a U-turn and come back. Like, you've gone too far. I talked about the pro wrestling re-education camps. Like, you're a prime candidate. Prime candidate for the gulag. You will learn to love pro wrestling again, because the way that you're consuming this media, I don't think you like it that much. I don't know what to say, man. These people are ridiculous. It doesn't make, if you're saying it makes the company look stupid to have their own logic and not follow the rules and regulations of WWE, I don't think you want an alternative. I don't think you want other companies. You just want more WWE. That's the purpose of AEW, is to be something different. I have been a wrestling fan as long as I can remember. I love WWE still. I love AEW now. They both exist in the same place in my mind. But I am smart enough to understand that what happens over here isn't what happens over here. I don't understand why wrestling fans don't get that. I would never expect, it's like what I talked about earlier, I would never expect the universe of Suits to follow the same logic of the Marvel universe. I wouldn't.
And it's a shame, because both these guys are insanely talented, but I find myself unable to watch a single match because it's just stupid stuff over and over.
Look, if you watch that match, and if you haven't watched that match, go out of your way, watch this match. It's the best television match that's been on TV. It's the best pro wrestling television match I've not ever seen. Don't want to say Hangman. No, I want to say Kenny Bryan. Maybe. It's tough. It's a throw. It's the best match of this year on television. If you watch this match and your immediate reaction was to go, that wasn't very believable, you are the biggest mark in the worst way. You've completely missed the plot of what you're doing. You don't understand pro wrestling. You don't understand the art form at all. It is entertainment. You're supposed to be entertained. And if you watch the reactions from people in that match, the crowd looks entertained. They're hot for it. They're on their feet. They're cheering. So why is there such a disconnect between the IWC and content creators and the people going to shows? I've never been to a show where people have looked at each other and go, I'm not really believing this. I'm having a bad time. I'm watching these guys do athletic feats I didn't think possible. I'm seeing new things in professional wrestling that I've never seen before that are very interesting. But I hate it because it's not realistic. Buddy, if I wanted realistic, I'd watch Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey's match on repeat. That is the most realistic wrestling match on the planet. And if you want to watch realistic wrestling matches, we can bring that up and you can just watch that all day long. All day long. I don't know how to explain it in a more succinct point. Pro wrestling is a televised show. It is not a legitimate sporting competition. There is athletics in it. Yes, that's cool. That's one of the things we love about pro wrestling. But the fact that you want to apply logic, not only do you want to apply real world logic, you want to apply logic from one company to another company. You're just making up rules. Like it's an Asperger's like thought. You're like, the rules that I have made up in my head about pro wrestling have to exist or it's bad. Like you're just creating your own things. It's ridiculous. All right, I'm done with him. I'm done with that conversation.